Welcome to another extension of the newly rebranded Build a Better Business podcast. I am super excited to have Juanita. I'm very excited to have you with me today. And what we're talking about is something that we don't talk about enough in the entrepreneurial world, and especially from a solopreneur standpoint. And that is what happens when someone that you are either related to, married to, in a relationship with, have as a child, somebody in the family gets sick and you are the caretaker. How does that impact your business? And it has an impact. And if your business is your sole income, or even if it's not, it's a supplemental income that impacts your not only your personal life as far as the everyday life, but also now your income and your finances. And we have to have these conversations about how do we move forward? How do we handle that? And Juanita has had this situation, is living through the situation, and that is what we're going to talk about today. How do you get through it? So if you're in this space, you're in the right place. Juanita, I want people to know, though, who you are and what it is that you do, what your business is, and what you contribute to the world. And then we will jump into that conversation. So welcome. Tell us who you are and what you do.
Thank you so much for having me. Again, my name is Juanita Gaynor. I am the founder and owner of Juanita E. Gaynor LLC, which helps women entrepreneurs deal with trauma and issues surrounding success and money. And as a trauma and mindset coach, it is my job to help those get to the core of those issues. Even like, how do you help with family members and things like that? So I'm excited to have the conversation to help those who may be going through it right now, how we can go through it together.
Absolutely. Right. And real quick, tell us, as much as you're comfortable, but tell us just
Okay.
the short version of how you came to be in the situation of caregiver that's impacted just life in general.
Yeah. So, May of last year, my fiance, we have lived in different places, so around the corner, and he came over for dinner, and and he was working on me because I had had surgery about a month and a half prior on my arm. So he's checking on me, making sure things are good, and I just noticed something wasn't right. I just was like, I didn't, I'm like, but I let him go home or whatever, and then the next day he just was, and so I called the ambulance. I thought he was having a stroke. And so we get to the hospital, and there, all of a sudden, they see his blood sugar is sky high, but now they're not focused on that. They don't care what that is. They're like, his white blood cell count is through the roof. We don't know what that is. So they stay overnight. We're there for a couple of days in observation, and his fever kept spiking. And they was like, yeah, I told the nurse, I was like, we're about to be admitted. And she's like, what? 20 minutes later, she says, we're admitting you to the main hospital. And it was about a week. And then they found out what he had. It was called necrotizing fasciitis, which is a flesh eating bacteria, which when most people hear it, they're amazed that he's still here. This is that bad. So when they found it, they basically said, we have to operate now. If we don't, he's going to die. If it's gotten to his muscles, he's going to lose his entire leg. And so from May through September of this past year, those he was in the hospital and in rehab. And so that was every day. So at this point, my business is nothing. Nothing's going on. Podcast shut down. Vlog shut down. Just operating in general. Like new clients I was bringing on in accounting firm. All of that is at a halt because at this point, that's a primary focus. And so he gets home, and I don't take in the cost of he has to stay with me now because he can't walk. And so that means I have the less steps, I have the bigger place. But you don't think about, you go from when you're not living with someone or you haven't really put your houses together yet, it went from, 1 or 2 nights and you go out to now the food cost has quadrupled because it's 3 meals every single day. It's medications, it's laundry, it's modifying your own home so that you can get around, and it's just like okay, and you don't think about it. You don't think about the money that's involved with it. You don't think about how you're going to pay bills, how you're maintaining two households. And so it becomes overwhelming. So we're at the place now where we're talking appointments through, at least you may have one day out of the week where he's not at appointments or therapy. So it's like if you haven't planned for work or whatever, I was doing some consulting. It's just like, okay, we need money in
Right.
here. It's the dealing with not only your own feeling of guilt, but theirs, because now the things that they were able to use to help you with, they can't, anymore. Those things take into effect. Like they can't just get up and walk out. To leave the house, we need medical transport because he cannot walk down the stairs. We're in wheelchair bound. So you gotta have somebody assist us. We can't just hop in his car and go anywhere. It's always dependent on something else. And as a caregiver, I'm so focused on what he needs that sometimes I have let my own health and my own mental kind of just go by the wayside.
Mhm.
Like the benefit is like he's good now. It's healed. It's all that we're going through the healing process, but now even dealing with him and he's understanding the gravity of where he was. Cause see, that's a whole new thing now we're walking into, because now he's seen the scars and now he's going back and forth to the doctors who are so excited to see him, and he doesn't understand because he, for the first 2 months, he doesn't remember
Mm-hmm.
he doesn't remember before July, you
Gotcha.
know. So explaining to him, and they're explaining to him that it wasn't looking good. We didn't think he was going to make it. It was
Mhm.
bad. And so he's hearing it from outside of us, and we really never told him. So it's now dealing with, he feels bad for putting us through that, but he didn't have a choice. It happened,
Of course.
and dealing with his thing where he went to work the day before this happened. The day
Just a
before he
normal,
was at work,
yeah, just a normal day.
and then normal day, then you got date night. We have our date night, and then the next day you're in the hospital and you don't come out for almost 6 months. you know, and it's, you just don't. And then put it this way, the first month and a half, 2 months, you don't even really remember.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
it just is like you're dealing with now those questions, and you're just putting yourself on the back burner, or you feel guilty about having to be up sometimes till 2 or 3 in the morning, because I still got podcast episodes that I have to update from last season that is not out because everything went to a crashing halt.
Right. Yeah.
Crashing. Mhm.
There's so much to unpack there. And
Yeah.
one, praise Jesus that he is doing
Yes.
better. All
Yes.
praises to God. Two, thank God that you were there. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people in the world who don't have somebody
Yeah.
that would immediately be available, right? And
Hmm.
thank God you were. And so that's a blessing in the bigger scheme of things, that
Yes.
one, he's doing well, praise God, made it
Hmm.
through. And two, you have been there to support. But let's unpack the impacts. So, first, let's talk about, and we were just talking about this before we hopped on, the importance of self care and you taking care of yourself. And then we'll get to the impact of the business. But you currently work a full time job from home,
Hmm.
correct? And
Yes.
you were running a business
Hmm.
and you had your personal life, right? And you probably have some other things going on there. But then your fiance gets sick, this happens, and you go into full time. I say full time care mode, but how did you balance what you couldn't let go, like you talked about, putting households together, um, rearranging your life? How did you figure out how to balance that? Or what did it look like at the beginning versus what you've learned now and you're able to do now?
In the beginning, because really, because he was at the hospital most of the time, it was going back and forth. There was very little paying attention to anything I had going on. Mine was get home, sleep, whatever. So the house fell apart or whatever, because you had to be alert to make sure what was going on with the doctors and things like that. So there was utterly no real self care. It was get food, get home, maybe get a few hours of sleep, back up. You're back at the hospital, and you're at the hospital from 8 9 a.m. until 8 9 p.m. You know, all day. You're making sure food, because he couldn't feed himself. So making sure he's eating, making sure that they're doing what they need to do. So you become enveloped in that. So when it was time for him to come home, and I think and that's the thing with most caregivers, you assume that it's going to be easier because you're in your own, environment and own space. Now, if you have not merged homes as of yet, that's you got a shocker, because now space becomes an issue. Where does everything go? I have a hospital bed here, I have a wheelchair here, we have a pot here. So how do we make everything accessible? Like, I got bath chair here, all of these things that, if the space isn't voluptuous, now how am I going to fit, all of this stuff in? Does doors got to come down? How is he going to move in and out? Which door can he go into? Like, all of a sudden you have these. And so again, in the beginning, you don't exist really. You basically, it's like, okay, I'm gonna lay down for a couple of hours and do whatever. And I'll do this, or I'll grab this and I'll grab that, until you have that one day where your body just is like, okay, I'm gonna crash. I'm gonna go to sleep, and you're gonna figure this out.
Right.
And I had one of those moments, and I was just like, okay, I can't keep going on. And I remember, I have a good core that I just was like, I was at a point one day when I was just like, I didn't even have the strength to pray for myself. I was exhausted. And I just said, and I never tell anybody. And God was like, tell these people, you got to tell them so that they can be there for you. And I remember putting in the chat, and I was just like, I'm exhausted. And I was just telling them what my day was. And, my apostle just came in and just immediately prayed. And it was like, okay, I have some covering now. I have people checking in on me and holding me accountable to get better care. And that is what you need when you begin to think.
Mm.
You need an external group that says, did you eat today?
Yeah.
Did
Hmm.
you wash? And no lie, and I don't even feel bad about this. Sometimes once I get him through his shower, if I was planning to take one in that now, I'm exhausted,
Right.
because it's the helping him again and do whatever, making sure he's stressed or whatever. And he's gotten a little bit more self-sufficient and doing a lot more things, but still there's a lot of uptick with it, because then in order for me to do mine, I have to deconstruct the bathroom
Mm. Hmm.
from the equipment and move stuff and whatever. I just was the one that I was like, I can't. I just can't.
Just tired. Yeah.
I can't. And
Hmm.
I no longer feel bad when I have to say that, because it's a true reflection. I can't do it. So I just don't beat myself up,
Yeah.
or if I just can't do something, like I have not felt bad if I just had to just turn off the computer and was like, I'm exhausted. And I know I said I was going to do this for the business, but I just can't, you know,
Yeah.
you know,
Compassion, having self compassion for
yeah,
yourself.
it was, yes, it was just like, I can't do it. And now what I like this morning, I woke up with this killer headache. He was like, babe, did you have any coffee yesterday? And I said no, because I have to drink a cup of coffee a day, just more so medical reasons, for due to a deficiency that my body has. And he says, babe, did you have any coffee yesterday? And I said no. He says, please go make you a cup of coffee. He was like, because I'm like, I got to get him ready. I got to get breakfast. He was like, well, just get yours and then drink yours first. And that's what you'll understand too. Your person will learn to have that, also that compassion for you as well. And
Hmm.
you'll go back to, being whatever. But I had to have that cup of coffee. And I'm like, oh, I can think clearly now. He said, did you fix I fixed me a sandwich. I did fix me something to eat,
Hmm.
and keep moving, because you're so, and he'll be like, did you eat? Did you do this? And instead of me feeling like, "Ugh, I'll get to it. Okay, let me go ahead and eat now."
Right.
Because again, if I'm in a situation where I'm sick or I can't do something, we're
Right.
where's
Yeah.
he, we both can't be laid
Both
up.
can't be seen. Well, and that's an interesting point that you bring up. Do you have a support system outside of you? And yeah, do you have one?
Not really. Now the kids do come by. They help with groceries. They help with certain things, but they are working also themselves. But if I need anything or whatever, they're supposed to go have a girlfriend. Come shopping whatever. But just during the heavy day to day, it's tough. And then with insurance, you're fighting with insurance because they don't pay for, it has to be extreme situations that they pay for an in-home health aide or someone to help. And then you got to deal with do you trust this person? How do you go through background checks? So there's so many things. And so if you have never thought about planning, what is what I call your senior planning,
Hmm.
and so as an accountant, that is something that I want to start working into estate planning with clients, because if you don't realize that insurance may not pay for a tech to come in every single day, depending on the type of insurance you have. So you have to think about that. Do you need a PCT? Do you need an RN or CNA? What do you need that's going to be able to help you through whatever? How are you going to pay that person? How is that going to work? Do you have to set up a business and things so that you can have somebody here when you need it? Respite care, you know, um,
What's
at the end of
RESPA?
the day, respite care, because I used to work with mentally challenged students years ago. But respite care is something where you would have somebody come in or where they could go that you could get some time off, kind of a breather, where they would stay. It's like whatever. But, again, he's able bodied.
Hmm.
But again, if you don't have a large enough space, like if we had a larger home and I had an extra bedroom, I would vet somebody that they could stay here and whatever and things like that. But there's things you got to think about
Yeah.
and doing that process, because you're with things and everything, you just can't let anybody and everyone in your
Mm-hmm.
home. You have to be very careful, because then too, he's right now immune compromised. So I got to make sure that you're not out doing being whatever you're doing, because I can't afford to get him sick and we're back in the same situation. So the crew is close. If I need something, they can call whatever, but the day to day does fall on me,
All
because
on
again,
you.
and
Yeah.
it's not because yes, I wanted to, but with everything that is going on and particularly what we've come from, I can't just introduce virtually a stranger into the mix
Yeah.
and not know what's going on and not be able to trust that person. So yeah.
That's a good point. You bring up a really good point about planning long-term care. And when we're in our 20s, 30s, maybe even 40s, we don't necessarily think about these things, right? And especially if you're raising children and the children are still young or not thinking about how
Yeah.
do we pay for what's in place if we get sick later in life. But this is the time to set those things up. So, as you said, you're going to start working with your clients on those. I have to say, my father is a planner and he sets an amazing example that I have not yet followed. But he sets an amazing example because his care, long term care, has been set up for years.
Mhm.
I didn't know about it until just a few years ago, but he'd already set all that up so that if he needed to go into long term care, it's already paid for, the insurance is already taken care of, all of that. And that's when whether you own your own business or not, that's just something that all of us need to
Yes.
proactively be setting in place. And I could be wrong, but maybe the younger you do it, the better rates you get. I don't know.
It's
But
not even about rates. If the say, for instance, okay, I feel the day that you decide that you get married, if you once you get married, once you commit to someone and you say I do, that should be something that's in place.
Mm-hmm.
You should start to put in place because, I have a friend who she made it real clear, I'm not built for that. That was a conversation her and her husband had. She says,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not built for that. So they've planned out what would happen if either one of them was to get sick and need short term or long term care. Um, and then when you have children, I think it's irresponsible if you don't do it. Not only short term and long term care, but also your final expense care. Like, what do you want your services to be? You want, things like that. And another aspect, what happens if you have to be committed to a mental hospital because you had a psychotic episode? All of that needs to be laid out, taken care of, orders put in, powers of attorney, all of that needs to be laid out. Once you commit to someone, that needs to happen. Now, if you become later in life and you're divorced or whatever, if you're a single person, I suggest that a single person, the moment you get out of high school, going into college, you need to be thinking about it and think about it. And it changes every 5 years because your life changes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. You make different
You know,
purchases, you have different responsibilities.
you know,
Yes, different
no,
assets, different liabilities. So,
right.
and people in your life change, right? As you get
Yeah.
older, at one point, somebody that you may have said is going to be a beneficiary or a caregiver themselves may no longer be on the planet. So, life, those
Yeah,
things
I have a
change.
thing about beneficiaries. What I like to do, and as I'm looking to, as I get more clients on the accounting side and the tax planning and all that, is start doing trust and stop having individuals as beneficiaries. Because if something happens and you don't take that person off, that person has full access to whatever
Mm.
funds. And so, in your current situation or life, they now don't have access or they can't properly bury you. So we have to get out of that aspect as well. But
Mm.
that's a whole nother
That's a whole
conversation.
nother conversation. Well, I want
Yeah,
to pivot us to the impact to your business. And so as we talk about you're a solopreneur, you've had your business. How long have you had your business, Juanita?
oh my goodness. Whew. Years. I've had how to say, I had closed the event management company last January, which had been open for 30 years. I had
Okay.
shuttered that business down, but my accounting firm I've had for about 7, 8 years. And then the podcast and things like that has been about 5. And for the One Elite Gainer, that has been a lifelong thing, but it's been about maybe 5 or 6 years where I've put it, actually, legalized it and done it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think one of the most things that suffered immediately was the podcast, the radio
Mm-hmm.
show, because I was in the middle of editing it. I was in the middle of my season
Right.
when everything happened, and therefore it was just a complete shutter. There was no posting, no nothing. So you think about the momentum, the streams and
Mm-hmm.
all of that. I think I was close to being monetized and it just went "Nyeh,"
Right.
because it stopped just that quickly. um and so, and then even with my YouTube, I had started what I call Trauma Talk Tuesdays, and it was every Tuesday there was a new video, whatever. And again, that was the shutter. So of course,
Mm-hmm.
those views go down or whatever. So when you're close to, I mean, mostly a lot of things was close to being monetized, and it just ended quickly because I had to pivot to something else that needed my attention more.
Yeah.
And just even with the coaching, like I had a complete mastermind masterclass that I was doing that I closed that down because I didn't know when I would be able to whatever, so I didn't take registrations for that.
Mm-hmm.
And just even writing in my blog on LinkedIn, like I don't think it's been probably months so far since the last time I wrote something. So a lot of the things where I had the attention and had the SEO out there and the build up, you search for me, you can still find things, but it's not as recent. That all kind of just went away. So when you're talking brand deals or working with someone, the leverage that you have, that you've
Mm-hmm.
been this go-to person, you know it kind of dwanes because what's recent? Oh, you haven't talked about this topic since September of last year, or things like that. So it's completely, I'm like restarting, because when I think
Yeah.
about it, like the let's talk about the radio show. The last episode I think I posted in the radio show was before my surgery, and that was like February of last year.
Wow, that's a long
So
time.
we're full time was like we're talking a year.
Hmm.
So all the businesses have been inactive for about a year.
And it has to
So
happen, right? The
it had to
priority
happen.
is the
Right.
family, right? The priority is your
The
fiance,
priorities
it's your
for
loved ones, hands
right.
down. But then the
Yeah.
question comes, you get to a point where you can restart, you can start to
Yep.
rebuild. And so you communicate. Sometimes you'll have an opportunity to communicate with your followers and your audience that, hey, I'm shutting things down. And sometimes you don't. And I go back to what you talked about earlier, having that self compassion, just knowing that priority one takes precedence, and then everything else will be fine. Stuff can be,
Yeah.
businesses can be rebuilt, audiences can be rebuilt, people will come
Yep.
back, loyal people will stay with you and be looking out and cheering you on and say, looking
Yep.
forward to you coming back. Those that aren't, that's okay, they will be replaced.
I
So
know.
then you have to start, but I'd imagine the restarting process is daunting. And so where do you decide, or where did you decide to restart, to get back in?
So what I did was I took a step back and I looked at all of my projects that I have outgoing that I had. And I had to make a decision of what I wanted to keep and what I didn't want to keep. What was the priority and things like that. That was one. Two, I had to build out a comprehensive strategic plan for all of them,
Mhm.
how it was going to go. But like before I noticed there's nothing, really out there because it's like, what happens if this? And then I had to start to split things out because there was a lot of things that were still intertwined. So I had to split things because if I decide that I want to shutter this down, I don't want to shutter the whole, business down or whatever. I had to compartmentalize what was needed, what the strategic exit plan looked like. What was the long term goal? Is this something that's just a project that's going to end in 5 years? Or is this something that I want to monetize to a point that I can sell, 5 years from now? And so I've done that. Laid out the plan, thought those things through. And so now it's okay, what does the rebrand look like? What is it that now I have to think about overall people are going to need? Because it's more now, it's different. I'm different.
Mhm.
I know something additional now that people may be thinking about, but they didn't have a voice out there that can help them guide them through that. How do I incorporate that, the journey, my journey into this day-to-day business, because that's what I do. I'm helping those build their businesses or expand their businesses. And how do I implement this to where this is a part of their planning as well?
Mm.
And so I'm grateful I started a Substack, like we were talking about, and
Yeah.
to just discuss my journey. It whether it gets monetized, and that's not even the here nor there. You can subscribe, but it's to discuss my journey. It's to discuss when I'm having my low days or whatever. That's really what that is about. That I
Mhm.
can do that, and then I can still keep the business aspect where it needs to be. So, for those who may not journal that right now, that's going to be my live journal, but you have to talk about and release those emotions so that you don't let them fester. Release them and let somebody else learn who can understand the same pain that you're going through. Put it out there because you'd be amazed at who responds back and was like, oh, I get that too.
Right.
But I had to compartmentalize. I had
Mhm.
to narrow it down and decide what was it I wanted to keep, what I wanted to be long term, and create a complete strategic plan, an exit strategy, medical strategy. What happens if I get sick? Because I had thought about it, but never put anything in place.
Mhm.
What happens if I get sick? Are the businesses going to die when I get sick? So now
Mhm.
it's like, okay, who can I actually put in place? This process will also make you understand that, do you want to, work your business or work in your business?
Mm.
And so
Yeah.
many of us solopreneurs or entrepreneurs are still working in our business, that everything's still connected to us so that we can't be out there and be the face of the business. So this helped me establish some clear things like, okay, within a certain amount of time, I need to bring in this revenue because I'm going to have to bring on an
Hmm.
assistant no matter what. That's going to have to just be, I need a personal assistant just to manage my schedule and his schedule, just appointments alone.
Hmm.
We went to the doctor and I had a 6-page spread because they're scheduling physical therapy, and I'm trying to make sure which days we can do it because he has other appointments outside of that
Right.
network, so we don't whatever. I know that I need a personal assistant or a house man, what I call a house manager, just to handle those things and things in the house.
Right.
Laundry, scheduling groceries. I think people think that those types of things, like, oh, you're bougie. Having a laundry service has been the best thing in my life. You
That
know,
wash, dry,
having
and fold, I imagine.
they come pick it up and they drop it off. I don't even have
Hmm.
to take it. That has been a lifesaver. I know people talk about and they talk mess about Instacart or whatever. It's been a lifesaver when
Hmm.
you're exhausted and you ain't slept all day and you need groceries.
Yeah.
Take advantage of like those things and put those things in your plan. Research those. I may not do it all the time, but okay, are we going to need somebody to come in and clean? And am I going to need one day where I just want to go get my hair done and I may have to bring somebody in just so that I can have a day to do that? We have to plan each and every aspect into that so that when you get sick, your business can still run on the same.
Hmm. That is wisdom, is what that is.
Yes.
But unfortunately, you said it too often, especially as solopreneurs, we are working in the business, not on the business. And so
Yep.
we're so caught up in the day to day tasks that I need to do to grow, to connect with people, to pitch to people, to close, to do the marketing, to do the email response, all of those things that we don't pull out for the 30,000-foot view and say,
Mm-hmm.
how do I remove myself out of the things that I can so
Yeah.
that if I get sick or if somebody else gets sick, this business doesn't die. And so it's great to bring that to the forefront because it's things that we need to think about and then
Yeah.
to start actively putting in place.
Yeah.
We are, as always, time goes so quickly when I have great guests like you. But if we can take 3 more minutes, I would like you to tell people, as you talked about, when you're restarting, you had to narrow down. You had to create a strategic plan with a lot of components. But you realized before this happened, you were doing a lot of great things. But now, as you restart, you have to be more selective, more strategic with what you
Yeah.
start with. And again, having compassion with yourself and saying that's okay. What those the things that I was doing, do I if I still want to do them that aren't going to be right now, they will come again in the future. And
Right.
so will you tell us what your next what your next 2 projects are that you're working on
Yep.
and your focus for the business? And then we'll
Sure.
wrap up with you telling people how they can connect with you and work with you.
So what I am doing is definitely we're keeping the radio show alive. We will continue with an extended season 4, so I can get all of those episodes uploaded and people to enjoy, and then we'll start preparing for season 5, which would actually air in September. And we are revamping um, the website. We're doing that, but we're also doing the YouTube channel. And
Oh,
so I have been excited about doing the YouTube channel because I was like, with TikTok things, whatever, it's like fine. So the new theme for the TikTok channel is called Empowered and Thriving. And so that will encompass Trauma Talk Tuesday. It will encompass Behind the Business, My Multi Passionate Life. And so they will all kind of intertwine. Trauma Talk Tuesday, of course, is talking about trauma. And then, of course, my Behind the Business is my personal journey of going through, this caregiver life and building the business. So those are the two primary focuses that I'm working on specifically for the month of February. And anyone can reach me. You can reach me and at Juanita E Gaynor, and that is on all my social media handles. So you plug that in, and you will definitely find me. But I'm just excited about being in this aspect of life now. I turned the big 50 back in December, and
Happy
so
belated.
that was a big shift. It was just like, you know what? I don't want to spend the next 25 years trying to figure out. I want to do 10, quit it, and then let us go to Bali somewhere and live. So it's kind of being smart and strategic about it.
Absolutely. And is the YouTube channel called Empowered and Thrive, or is that TikTok only?
The Empowered and Thriving will be the YouTube channel.
Okay.
That will be the whole thing behind it. But you can find me at Juanita E Gainer.
Okay.
So everything YouTube, Facebook, all social media handles is at Juanita E Gainer, and you'll be able to find me no matter where I'm at.
Perfect. Okay.
Mhm.
Juanita, thank you for being so transparent and sharing. Like I said at the beginning, we don't talk about these things enough. And this
No.
is life. This happens. I was just on a
Yes.
master class earlier this week with another coach who she had just left her job 6 months prior, and then her husband had a stroke,
Mm.
and she had 3 children to raise, and a
Yeah.
husband who was highly incapacitated. And so these things happen, right? And
Yeah.
now he's better, the children are better, because the children, she had small children, and so they are now impacted as well as her. She's
Yeah.
a caregiver, right? And so now they're all better, and her business is growing. But these things happen, and we are able to learn from one another only when we share. So thank you for being willing to
Yes.
share and have this
Welcome.
conversation. And if you guys, like Juanita said, if you want to get in touch with her, have more questions, reach out,
Reach
because
out.
we get stronger the more we share.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much.